Welcome to the HL7 Australia Connectathon kickoff meeting for the AU patient summary. The Connectathon starts next week on Wednesday 11th and Thursday 12th at the Swiss Hotel in Sydney. As an acknowledgement of country, HL7 Australia acknowledges and pays respect to the past, present, and future traditional custodians and elders of Australia and the continuation of cultural, spiritual, and educational practices of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. My name's Heath Frankel. I'm a track lead of the AU Patient Summary track. And we also have Landon Riley on the call as one of the track leads, who is also co-chair of AU Core TDG. And Tim Panaho, also a co-chair of AU Core TDG, is a track lead. The AU Patient Summary Implementation Guide defines the data model and minimum expectations for systems to produce and consume patient summaries information in Australia. And this track is going to allow participants to demonstrate generating, sharing, and viewing AU patient summaries based on that AU implementation guide. Also give us an opportunity to learn how AU patient summary can be generated and accessed using a file server. And our goals are really to allow system implementers to validate their patient summaries that they're generating using the patient summary Inferno test suite that will be available at the Connectathon, and also exchange patient summaries with other systems that can consume and view them. From a Spark perspective, this is a Spark supported track, and we are still going through the process of validating the patient summary implementation guide, which is currently out for release 1 ballot. And we're looking for additional coverage to assist in increasing the maturity of the various profiles within that implementation guide to AFMM2. That requires 3 independently developed systems to have 80% coverage of the data elements. And hence why the Connectathon is such a useful forum for us to gather that coverage requirements. We will have a couple of people attending from Spark to help with collecting that information. And I believe, Jamie, you may be one of those on the attending that will be there to help, etc. And we're also going to have an ongoing hot topics breakout session where we get to talk about a couple of those, what are the more recent hot topics around that. This is a provisional agenda for the track, and the day kicks off at 9 o'clock with basically a welcome. And then we move into our track areas, and we basically go through a bit of a kickoff and introductions, and then we'll start to go through some of the track scenarios as a walkthrough. Then we move into just basically connecting and testing phases. And what I'm considering there is to actually allocate certain quarters to actually explicitly walk through some of the track scenarios and get interested vendors for that particular scenario to actually walk through the steps in those particular scenarios, which I'll come back to in a little bit. Day 2 We basically continue a bit more of the same, connecting and testing. But in Q2, after morning tea, on day two, we will have our hot topics breakout, which I'll go into a little bit further in a moment. And then after lunch, we start to prepare for our demonstrations and report outs um, in the afternoon. As I mentioned, we'll have a patient summary hot topics after morning tea on Thursday. And there's a couple of topic discussions that we have um, as candidates, but there is an EAOI at this particular link at the moment on Zulip. The current topics are talking about must support obligations for elements with multiple cardinality, which has been an ongoing topic, which we have yet to through our TDGs yet to get any consensus on, and it is a an open question for feedback as part of the release one ballot that we are hoping to get feedback from vendors on this particular topic. The second one is also something that we've got in the ballot for feedback from vendors, which is considering considerations required when we're consuming an IPS document from another jurisdiction within the Australian healthcare context, where we've specifically implemented the AU Patient Summary Implementation Guide, and but we're receiving an IPS from another jurisdiction, and so what sorts of considerations we need to consider on in that. So they're the two topics at the moment. But if you've got another hot topic, that please go off to the Zulip poll and add your new topic. I'll just see if I can get that up on my screen. It's probably going to take a while to load, as Zulip does. Anyway, I'll move on from that. That is taking a while. There is a track page in there. Oh, finally loaded. So there is this poll here. You can see the voting on a couple of the topics already, but you can add a new topic by adding a new option here. So and then vote on it yourself, and we can consider that for the session that we've got. So I think we've got about an hour and a half. I usually leave about half an hour for each topic, so there's certainly room for an extra topic if required. Having said that, those existing topics may go a little bit more than half an hour. Track pages exist on the Confluence. We're finding a couple of errors here and there, like the errors linking to this particular kickoff meeting and time, but we will make sure that that is up to date. It'll have links, pretty much similar content to what's being presented in this presentation, including what's coming forth. The ballot, as I've mentioned a couple of times, is available at this link. So it is the 1.0.0 ballot version of it. And if we look through some of the profiles in here, in particular, where are we? The AUPS section in here. We're going through some of these topics here and as an example of the considerations feedback that we're looking to retrieve. Prerequisites, basically, if you've got a product that you're looking to support as a AUPS producer or an AUPS consumer, whether it's in finalized product or just in development or just want to play around in that space, you're more than welcome to bring that along. Just make sure that that your endpoints, etc., are accessible. So if you're um, hosting those on the cloud somewhere, that is perfect. If you're only hosting them on a local laptop, that makes it a little bit more challenging. so for other vendors to be able to get access to them. So just make sure that they are accessible through a public um, mechanism, IP address, etc. The test scenarios that we're going to work through for patient summary, there is a separate page that goes into details for this as well. And the first scenario, so that's the page there that goes into various details. Um, Test scenarios gives you some criteria of success and extra bonus options to try and extend beyond just a basic implementation of each of those scenarios. But basically, scenario one is for a fire server that's acting as a patient summary producer, generating an AU patient summary. However, your system particularly does that. But there's three use cases that we've got there where we've got a patient summary with mandatory um, sections being populated with no known data narrative only. We've got a second use case where we've just got mandatory sections being populated with some entry content. And finally, one where we've got mandatory and recommended sections. So when we're talking about mandatory, we're talking about your problems, medications, and allergies. Recommended, we're moving into immunizations and results. And I think there might be procedures in there as well. So those are a producer's scenario for a fire server. Or you can be a producer as an app. So this is probably more in a curation kind of scenario where you allow a user to actually build up data that you have access to within your app. But basically, it's the same scenarios where there is but no data known. So you're actually populating that those mandatory elements, stating that there is no known data. Then there's the second one with the sections and mandatory sections and entries and mandatory and recommended sections. And finally, as a consumer scenario where you are able to retrieve a patient summary for a patient and perhaps locate a past patient summary document and also retrieve a referenced patient summary. So perhaps you've got a document reference that has a link to the patient summary and being able to retrieve that and then view it. So the location might be actually looking at the document reference endpoints examples, and then the retrieve might actually be executing a dollar summary operation or a read, etc. So if you're looking to be a participant, there is a participants page, and that link goes straight to it. It's not actually a sub page of the patient summary. It's actually a combined page for AU Core and PS. So it's a bit empty at the moment, but please register your organization and system here. What type of server it is, what your authorization details are, what your connection details are. And this will be used by other participants on the day so that they can get access to your system or know that you're playing a particular role, such as an AUPS consumer or a producer. And then they can come and find you in the room to start connecting to you. Talked a little bit about the actors already, and we're also, as I mentioned before, we're seeking implementation feedback. We are continually interested in how you're generating and accessing and providing access to your patient summaries. We are also interested in how you are consuming those patient summaries, whether you're viewing them, whether you're importing certain parts of it or doing some other interesting things with the patient summary data. We're also looking at how to receive the IPS from another jurisdictions, as I talked about before, and also must support elements with multiple cardinalities. Um, so some of the areas of additional testing coverage that we're looking for, we're striving for 100% coverage on must support elements. We're not quite there with composition, medication request, procedure, and smoking status. We have our 80%, but we want to reach 100% if we can of must support elements. So some of those elements as examples for composition, we're looking at sections around results and medication devices, advanced directives, alerts, functional status, and plan of care. So if you've got any capability to populate those sections, we would be very interested in capturing your outputs from those. Keeping in mind, doesn't necessarily need to be absolutely perfectly valid. It's more about the fact that you are testing it. And certainly, we're interested in any feedback on the IG if the IG doesn't seem appropriately um, for defined for some of these things. And then when we're looking at some of the entries, we've got medication request where we're looking for a reason reference example, and similar with patient summary procedure, where we don't have any enough evidence around those reason reference elements. So we're looking for those three different vendors in that space, and also smoking status. If there is a data absent reason. So that one's probably a little bit obscure, but if you do have that capability, would be very interested in knowing about it. Then we're looking at other ones that we don't have 80% coverage for at the moment. So pathology results observation is one of those, smoking status, practitioner role, encounter, and related person. So encounter and related person, they're actually not directly associated with the patient summary itself, the composition, I mean. They're actually related to things like procedure. Um, and so they're probably less utilized at the moment. But we are looking to see if we can find some systems that can show use of participants in an encounter, a reason reference again as part of encounter, and for a related person, name and address usage. For practitioner role, we need a little bit more work on that. A lot of our authors are using um, a lot of the systems are using author as a practitioner, but we don't have practitioner role um, much coverage in that space. So we're certainly looking for systems that have the ability to reference a practitioner role with identifiers and specialties and telecom. And also pathology results. There's some a few elements there that we have some missing coverage for as well, including specimen, has member, and reference ranges and subcomponents. Some other test coverage use cases we're looking for is missing and suppressed data. So if you are masking your data for whatever reasons, it would be great to know about it. And also the known current medic problems, no known allergies, and no known medications. So there's scenarios that we would like to see some more um, evidence of it being implemented within the Australian community. Any questions at this stage? Okay, I'll move on to testing tools that I mentioned. We've got Inferno um, that will be available. And so there's the link to Inferno. We are in the process of doing an update of that of Inferno, and that should be released in the next or this week. And that'll have some additional conformance testing that you'll be able to do. So the previous were relying on the validator to do our validation. This time we're actually going to be looking at must support capabilities and the conformance associated with mandatory must supports, um, etc. So we're also, if you want to use the Fire Validator CLI for validating, that is fine as well. So there's details on how to do that. And of course, we've got some pretty good examples sitting in the patient summaries that very much align back to those use cases I talked about, with those scenarios where we've got minimal patient summaries as examples, and we also have maximal um, patient summary examples in there. So they're useful to um, use for the scenarios that we're talking about. So the basic summary would be the second use case that I talked about for each of those scenarios where it's just populating the mandatory sections. The no known X is populating the mandatory sections with no known entries, which, as I mentioned, we're looking for additional evidence of being able to support those. And then we've got some um, full bundles in here as well. So just trying to find the example of a full bundle. I think I have to follow up on that one. That's not as obvious as it was before.
Heath, what's a full bundle?
Don't you have examples of all the sections being populated?
No.
No.
IPS does,
Is it
but
just the
we
recommended?
100% do not.
Is it just some of the recommended ones?
I mean, yeah, if you look down the AUPS bundle example, we've got like that table just below. That'll show you the ones that we do have. So obviously we've got the mandatory ones. We don't have um and we've also got pregnancy history, social history, and history of procedures and diagnostic reports and immunizations. So that's a mix of recommended and optional. IPS has the full set. One of the reasons we don't is that there's a number of pieces of work we're waiting on with things like the TGA for doing the implanted medical devices. So we're not putting out examples before we've got like the agreed content on how that's supposed to work within Australia. There are some in trains. So I think Graham Grieve has provided an example of patient story coming off some of the work he's been taking forward in his app and collecting some of that. It's not in there yet, but we might have that available for Connectathon. We're in chats with him. Um, but yeah, no,
Okay.
we're not going to have a every single section for a while.
Okay, so I was a little bit thrown by the new layout here. So these are the basically the links to the examples that were in the IG. So these are the three that are referenced here, and then these are the not full but um more coverage being provided in these Joyce 28, Joyce 27, and November ones.
Yeah,
Is that right?
those have the data provided from the clinical focus group that represent some of the use cases. So each of those is tied to a use case we've worked through with the community. And the example content in there around meds and the diagnostic results come from the clinicians in the clinical focus group. So they're, as much as we can have some content that makes sense to a clinician.
Great. And there is also an IPS viewer that it can be used as a basic thing. It's just a copy and paste that can be used. So, as an example, I can go back to one of these previous examples that was provided in here and copy and paste that into one of the into that viewer, and then I can actually view it in two different modes. Um, so this particular mode is presenting MU as based on each of the entries. Um, and then there is also a text generated view, which is actually presenting it as per the text rendering provided in each of the sections. And you can see that that's actually rendering very similar to the way it was presenting in the IG with the various coloring and etc. So that's a useful tool that can be used as well. We've got our Zulip chat for the patient summary track, which is already getting some posts on it. And that'll be used throughout the track for latest announcements and updates and any questions that either leading up to the Connectathon or during the Connectathon. So if there's any questions, I'll take those now. Otherwise, afterwards, you can contact me directly through my email. So is there any questions at all? If not, we could probably stop the recording and drop off.
Oh, sorry, I've got one question, Heath.
Okay, Tim.
Yeah. Just back on the the encounter stuff. Is there stuff that was flowed from the conversations and sparked into this group around what we want to do with encounter and more? I noticed that was kind of as part of that second part of the additional testing, but is there more that we want from the community to provide when it comes to encounter?
So as I mentioned, the encounter is actually not the encounter associated with the patient summary. It is an encounter that is associated with some entry within the patient summary. And off the top of my head, procedure is an example of
Ah,
that.
okay.
There may be a second example, but I can't remember what it is. So yeah, it's kind of a second level reference rather than a first level one that is associated directly with the composition, the
Okay.
patient summary composition.
All right. I think I understand that.
And that's probably why we're getting low um, evidence for its use at this point in time is because procedures are actually quite low as well in evidence. And it's not necessary, like it's not required to actually reference it or include it um, in the patient summary bundle. You can actually
Reference it.
reference it externally from the
Yeah.
bundle.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And that goes for related person as well. I think related person is also a secondary reference off of procedure. And I think there might be one other scenario there as well. But
Yeah. I was trying
although
to think.
related person in theory can be an author, but we don't have many of those sorts of use cases either, or implementations using that.
Cool. Thanks. That's it for me.
Thanks, Tim. If there's no more questions, we stop if we haven't already stopped. Thanks, Jamie.